West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Never a dull moment around here. A judge has just unsealed more of the affidavit that was used to justify the Mar-a-Lago search of Donald Trump's golf club. Let's bring in my colleague, NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter. Tom, I was trying to read and talk, and it didn't go well, so I know you've gone through this. Tell me what is newly unsealed.
Well, it doesn't go well for me. That's why I was reading. I was reading and writing first.
This kind of brains.
The advantage from my office. So we got essentially here 9 paragraphs of this search warrant affidavit that have been redacted, either in part or in full, and it has to do with something that we already know about from a high level, that there was 2 grand jury subpoenas that were issued in this prior to the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago taking place. We know that from the ongoing litigation involving the special master. So we've been hearing about that for the last couple of weeks. And what federal prosecutors said today is they said, look, hey, Judge, we've already talked about this in another case. The grand jury, the judge that oversees the grand jury, Judge Beryl Howell, has approved us to disclose this information. So since we put it in the search warrant, it makes sense for us to now unredact it there. I think a couple of pieces of information here are new, or at least new in the context of this search warrant affidavit that would be of interest. First off, we now know what was inside that red-weld envelope, which is a type of envelope that you would put classified information, specifically how the documents inside of there were marked. 5 were marked confidential, 16 marked secret, 17 marked top secret. Wow. And then on those documents, there's some various markings, including some that appear to contain information that was derived from FISA sources, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So that's a surveillance that occurs electronically on foreign adversaries to the United States, as well as HCS, which is human information. So that's new information. We know that was provided, that there was a certified letter that was provided to the FBI and DOJ at Mar-a-Lago on June 3rd. The person who wrote that, now it doesn't say specifically who it was, but says that based upon the information that has been provided to me, I am authorized to certify on behalf of the office of Donald J. Trump the following: that they searched the boxes that moved from the White House to Florida. 2, that the search was conducted after the subpoena to try to locate any sort of responsive documents. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And C, any and all responsive documents accompanied the certification, and that we didn't make any sort of notations or writings or reproductions of those documents. Now, we now know, based on the Justice Department's assertions, that was not the case at all, because obviously they went back and conducted a search warrant and they found these things. On top of that, apparently, according to what was unsealed today from this FBI affidavit, that Trump's counsel stated that all the records that came from the White House went to this storage room in the basement of Mar-a-Lago, and that there were no records in any private office space or other location at Mar-a-Lago. Again, we now know from what's been publicized by the FBI, according to what they say they found in their investigation, that that's not the case, that they found documents in Trump's personal office. So I think those are kind of the key takeaways from this. The existence of these subpoenas, talked about, known about, you've mentioned it before, not new, but I think some of the surrounding color and detail today about those are potentially new. And again, still going through this real time, so forgive me, Twitter viewers.
No,
some of this stuff may be a little bit off, but
it's all about like the
as far as what's new.
There's that stuff about where you're talking about is unnamed, the people who signed these documents, the lawyers at the end, the last stuff you were talking about, Tom. Is that all basically what we now believe is the Christina Bobb stuff? Is that sort of what this connects to in terms of the other reporting?
It may be, and you'll forgive me that I want to triple check before going with that, but I think those are some of the assertions that I made.
He's different from us.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to link things up.
I want to pull, though, David and Joyce into this. Joyce, I want your thoughts on what's been unsealed.
Well, this does in large part make the information that's been revealed consistent between the D.C. and the Florida investigations. Of course, the Mar-a-Lago grand jury subpoena is issued out of a grand jury functioning in the District of Columbia. If there's one takeaway here, Nicole, and it's not certain, but there's more of an implication in this newly released information that the former president did play a role in the provision of information about documents to whoever the lawyer was who certified this information to the Justice Department. There's this implication that documents were stored in storage areas and that there was nothing in personal offices, and that seems like the sort of information that would have been very likely to come from the former president. So this gives DOJ more of a basis to move forward. And of course, because this involves the grand jury subpoenas and not documents that were ultimately seized in the search, DOJ is free to move forward with inquiries to witnesses without violating Judge Cannon's order.
David, Tom Winter is a very meticulous reporter. This is his beat. Joyce is a very careful lawyer. I am neither of those things, so I want to put it a little more bluntly. Is this more evidence or more information that suggests that Trump lied about what remained and Trump lied about where it was?
I think it's more probable than not that Trump lied to his lawyers, caused them to make false statements to the Department of Justice. I'm giving the lawyers the benefit of the doubt because I'm a lawyer and I like to think lawyers don't typically lie knowingly to the United States government during a criminal investigation. They may have exercised some modicum of due diligence, but the problem with being a lawyer for Donald Trump is that no lawyer can exercise client control. No lawyer can ultimately get the truth out of their client when their client's name is Donald Trump. So I think it's more likely than not that he lied to them, knowing that they were going to transmit those lies to the government. And there's nothing that antagonizes an FBI agent or a Justice Department lawyer, Joey well knows this, than being lied to. And that's why the obstruction piece is so prominent here. And in cases involving the retention of classified documents, among the variables that can tilt the balance of proceeding criminally or not is whether there are aggravating factors present. And no factor is more aggravating, or fewer more aggravating, than obstruction of justice, in addition to the sensitivity of the documents that Tom reported on. FISA-derived collection? Are you kidding me? Human? The reckless disregard for protecting national security interests was just rife at Mar-a-Lago.
Katie Benner, I know that DOJ is driven by a legal strategy, and the transparency supports the legal strategy. But my thought from you is, are they also aware that by putting out and releasing and unsealing information as quickly as they have, they are keeping the likes of Bill Barr and John Yoo and Chris Christie constantly on right-wing media sources attesting to the strength of the federal government's case, the strength of the federal government's evidence, and the fact that Donald Trump appears to have broken the law and lied?
I think that they would always say that they're putting out this information in response to activities that are happening in the court itself, that as more information comes out in court, it allows them to be more transparent with the public in its filings. I mean, certainly we would have to be blind and deaf to not really understand the conversation that's happening in the public around this case, particularly on the right. So I'm sure that people are cognizant of that. And what's so interesting about one of the most interesting details to me in this latest filing, this latest version of the filing, is that it also shows that the Justice Department was worried about how Donald Trump would respond to the request for records from NARA. The surveillance footage that they requested is for that period of time after NARA had continued to request for information and before the information, that first 15 boxes was transmitted. I believe that that's the timing, if I'm reading this correctly. And again, that sort of reinforces this idea, whether it's John Yoo, whether it's Bill Barr, pick your, Republican former Justice Department official, that Donald Trump did do something wrong. And then the question is just whether or not he should be prosecuted for it. The question is no longer for a group of these people whether or not there was wrongdoing.
And John Hellman, it's an important distinction, and I keep pointing to Barr and Christie and Yu's comments about the strength of the government's case, because I think the journalism suggests that there's a lot of consternation. I mean, the words pulverized and obliterated were used to set the bar that high for the evidence that DOJ must present. And it seems that we're on our way toward pulverizing and obliterating if you've got zero disagreement about the facts of this case.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I do also think, there's a perception, because Merrick Garland has been the way he's been and is who he is, and that his attempt he didn't want to, he was trying to steer the department away from the politicization of the Trump era. Was really trying to get back to an older version of what the DOJ was like. That somehow some of these kind of considerations, like the ones you just talked about, the nature of, Katie's 100% right. They are driven primarily, these disclosures, by what's going on in the court, et cetera, et cetera. But I know some people who work for Merrick Garland who are in that department who are political people who understand messaging, who understand the nature of the world we live in, who understand the power of fact, and the power of Bill Barr and Chris Christie and John Yoo and others on right-wing media, basically saying, no, this isn't conspiracy. These are very powerful claims, legal claims, and the facts are bad for Donald Trump. They understand that, and they understand that when they cross that Rubicon, as I still go back to it, the moment that Merrick Garland decided, I'm going to authorize this search of Mar-a-Lago, send the FBI down there, he knew he was crossing a Rubicon and going a place he did not want to go, which was there was going to be a massive political war over this. And once they cross that Rubicon, I think they are not politicizing the case, but they're thinking about. Yeah. They know what they're in. They know the war they're in, and there's people in that department who are smart and understand that part of the way you illustrate the potency of the case, the obliterating nature of it, the pulverizing nature of it, is to have reinforcement like we almost never have in our politics now of former Trump allies on right-wing media saying the same things that people are saying on straight media, on MSNBC, on CNN, and other places. That's an important thing that speaks to the legitimacy of the case and to what the department is doing.
It is Wednesday, the 14th of September of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of this meddlesome burial procession? 10 days! My mom's going to recuperate from her hip replacement surgery before... Well, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't be disrespectful to the dead. Okay. Pomp and circumstance, my God. Can't escape it. It's okay anyway, because it's emblematic of the demise of representative democracy around the world, and you think that a monarch's getting interred, but no, it's democracy. The monarchies, the aristocracy will continue. You could almost say it's baked in. Almost. Anyway, there's lots of other troublesome events happening out there. We are attending to a few of those here in the salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today. Oh yeah, it seems that there's a full frontal assault on everything, the institutions of our representative democracy, to allow us to be, rational human beings, so that we can, decide the course of this ship of state. And apparently, the captain, whatever that is, and we kind of know, Leonard Leo knows who it is, they they don't really want the crew having much of a say about what goes on with the ship of state. Representative democracy. It was only a way for them to wheedle their way in. Otherwise, they would have been kept out on the margins because they're the antithesis of representative democracy and all the duty that it requires. Okay. Are we done with the sermon? Yes, we are. Little bit of info about dear mom. She's recuperating nicely, actually, as I think. We'll see. They actually pushed her appointment with the surgeon to Monday of next week, not interfering with any of our duties here at the salon. But we'll find out the final course. The insurance company is only going to cover so much, and then they want my mom to cover it, and I know that's how it works. But I think that she's actually doing quite nicely. As long as they don't upset her with finances in the middle of the night, because then she can't sleep. Thank you very much. Call me. I'm right there. I'm the one that's supposed to know about this stuff. In fact, I actually do. And I've been in communication with the insurance company. But, oh well, they want to make sure they're going to get paid. And I don't blame them. Everybody wants to get paid. Everybody. What do we have in store for you that is troublesome in the world that we will be attending to here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, yes, that was a breakdown on how these more portions of the Mar-a-Lago search warrant affidavit that was unsealed. Mm-hmm. All right, if the DOJ is going to communicate through, its pleadings and whatnot, they're doing quite a great narrative. And I don't know. Trump's just like, and his lawyers, if you want to call them that, are stepping right into it. And well, they should. On the rest of the menu, the FBI is investigating a package bomb explosion that injured one at Northeastern University in Boston last night, and another suspicious package at a prominent arts college nearby. An independent commission recommended that the Confederate memorial at Arlington National Cemetery be removed. I can see the goose-stepping protests right now. And the rubber-stamped Tennessee Charter School Commission expressed alarm as local school officials vote down charter schools affiliated with MAGA darling Hillsdale College. And we should know more about Hillsdale College. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where lights on the Eiffel Tower will soon be turned off more than an hour earlier at night to save on energy. Thanks, Vlad. And Twitter's former security chief told Congress that both China and India had agents working for the social media company. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the left there is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, if you could send those funds our way once a month, that helps us pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue this powerhouse of resistance that has been resisting dark forces arrayed against not only representative democracy here in the great old United States, but representative democracy around the world. And we are but a small bulwark against that, but we be mighty. And we have you to thank for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. So, yeah, please send us what you would spend on an espresso-type coffee drink. The money is put to good use. And the reason it's good use is because, well, in the system that we exist in, they keep raising the costs. How dare they? Anyway, all kidding aside, thank you for helping us pay our bills. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thanks, Tom, for doing so. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find the show notes and links diary by looking at my Twitter feed, because it's right there. The link is right there. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And, of course, do not forget that the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library over these past 11-plus years can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. Look for Netroots Radio. We're right there. All right, let's look into this Boston issue here. You know, you think about the marathon. This is, would put a city on edge, don't you think? William J. Cole of the Associated Press brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, indeed. A package exploded on the campus of Northeastern University in Boston late yesterday, Tuesday, and the college said a staff member suffered minor injuries. An authority said another suspicious package was found near a prominent art museum, and the FBI was assisting with the investigation. The parcel that blew up was one of two that were reported to police early in the evening. Boston's bomb squad neutralized a second package near the city's Museum of Fine Arts, which is on the outskirts of the Northeastern campus. NBC Boston reported that the package that exploded went off as it was being opened near the university's Holmes Hall, which is home to the university's creative writing program. And I would say, in this reporter's opinion, something a bit more important to the investigation, the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program. It said the FBI was assisting the investigation. Authorities declined to elaborate, but Northeastern spokesperson Shannon Nargi said in a statement that an unidentified university staff member suffered minor injuries to his hand in the explosion. Philippe Colon, a Boston police superintendent, later described the victim as a 45-year-old man. Police converged on the campus shortly before 7:30 p.m., and the university asked students who had gathered for an evening journalism class in the hall to evacuate the building. Northeastern is a private university in downtown Boston with about 16,000 undergraduate students. WCVB-TV said one of its reporters, Mark Boudet, was teaching a class there at the time. Boudet told the station his class was moved outside, but that neither he nor his students heard an explosion. Michael Davis, chief of Northeastern's police force, told reporters the campus was secure. Police did not say whether any other suspicious packages were found. We are monitoring the situation at Northeastern, Boston police said, and we are ready to work with the university and our law enforcement partners on any prosecutions that may develop. Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden added, promising a comprehensive investigation to determine exactly what occurred here. Harvard University and MIT, both on the other side of the Charles River separating Boston from Cambridge, said they were increasing patrols on their campuses as a precaution and urging students and faculty to report anything suspicious. Lolita C. Baldor of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An independent commission is recommending that the Confederate Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery be dismantled and taken down as part of its final report to Congress on the renaming of military bases and assets that commemorate the Confederacy. Panel members said yesterday, Tuesday, rolled out the final list of ships, base, roads, buildings, and other items that they said should be renamed. But unlike the Commission's recommendations earlier this year, laying out new names for 9 Army bases, there were no suggested names for the roughly 1,100 assets across the military that bear Confederate names. Retired Army Brigadier General Ty Sedulli, vice chair of the commission, said the final cost for all of its renaming recommendations will be around $60 to $63 million. Okay. The total for the latest changes announced yesterday was about $41 million and is included in that amount. The latest group of assets includes everything from the Arlington Memorial to Navy ships and some Army vessels to street signs, water towers, athletic fields, hospital doors, and even decals on recycling bins. The bulk of the remaining costs, or about $21 million, would cover the renaming of 9 Army bases and about $450,000 for recommended new names at the U.S. military at West Point in New York. Brigadier General Sedulli said the panel determined that the memorial at Arlington was problematic from top to bottom. He said the panel recommended that it be entirely removed with only the granite base remaining. The statue, unveiled in 1914, features a bronze woman crowned with olive leaves standing on a 32-foot pedestal and was designed to represent the American South. According to Arlington, the woman holds a laurel wreath, a plow stalk, and a pruning hook with a biblical inscription at her feet that says they have beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. The pedestal features 14 shields engraved with the coats of arms of the 13 Confederate states and Maryland, which did not secede or join the Confederacy. Some of the figures also on the statue include a slave woman depicted as Mammy, holding what is said to be the child of a white officer, and an enslaved man following his owner to war. And the Latin inscription translates to, "The victorious cause was pleasing to the gods, but the lost cause to Cato," which was meant to equate the South's secession to a noble lost cause. Kimberly Cruzy and Jonathan Matisse of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. When local school officials voted down a Tennessee charter school linked to Hillsdale College this summer, staffers at the state commission that was soon have to decide whether to let the controversial school open anyway reacted with shock at how things unfolded. The text messages they exchanged, obtained through a records request by the AP, showed the close attention state staffers paid to the school board's resounding rejection in the wake of Hillsdale President Larry Arnn's disparaging comments about teachers. When no one showed up to make the case for the Hillsdale-affiliated charter school application, the alarm among those who would be left holding the bag was palpable. What? They invited both schools to speak, and Hillsdale did not show up? Texted Beth Figueroa, the commission's director of authorizing. What? Replied Chase Engel, commission spokesperson. I'm speechless, Figueroa wrote. Critics ranging from some Democratic lawmakers to educators have argued the Tennessee Charter School Commission was designed to rubber stamp charters that local communities do not want, with several members tied to pro-charter groups. The 9 members are handpicked by Republican Governor Bill Lee, a vocal charter school supporter and proponent of Hillsdale College's charter initiative, and confirmed by lawmakers and the GOP supermajority General Assembly. The staffers work for the commission. Hillsdale, a small conservative college in Michigan, holds outsized influence with Republican politicians. Arnn had recently spearheaded the 1776 curriculum, inspired by Trump's short-lived 1776 commission, as a direct response to the New York Times 1619 project, focusing on America's history of slavery. Curriculum materials glorify the founders, downplay America's role in slavery, and condemn the rise of progressive politics. Its prominence has strengthened among conservatives amid the national debate over the role schools should play in teaching race and sexuality. South Dakota, for one, turned to a former Hillsdale politics professor to write proposed social studies standards for its public schools, and they align with the 1776 curriculum. Tennessee's State Commission will be put to the test this week during public hearings run by commission staffers as board members consider whether to approve applications from 3 Hillsdale-affiliated charter schools appealing their rejections by local school boards. The texts were among hundreds of documents the commission provided after the AP requested all conversations relating to Hillsdale College and their charter school affiliates. Most of the records showed commission staffers helping applicants navigate the appeals process, telling them what information was needed, and offering appeals training. But the documents also included texts as staffers watched the fallout of Arnn's disparaging remarks on teachers as local school boards in Rutherford, Jackson, Madison, and Clarksville, Montgomery denied the Hillsdale-affiliated applications. Well, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, she's going the difference. So the problem with different movies is it's hard to know how to market them. For instance, if you think, based on trailers, that Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, written and directed by Adama Ebo, is a wry satirical comedy mockumentary, then you'll be confused and or disappointed because it's not. The documentary is a spine for the film. Trinity Childs and her husband, Pastor Lee Curtis Childs, are leaders of a Prosperity Gospel Baptist church that has been devastated by Lee Curtis's acts of sexual misconduct. So now the Childs have brought in a film crew to document their comeback. But mixed in with scenes from the documentary perspective are traditional anonymous third-person camera scenes as well as one extremely expressionistic scene, all of them marked with non-diegetic sound effects. So the mockumentary is just one narrative tool among others that Ebo uses. But since we're not used to seeing all these tools bundled together this way, Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul feels like something different, although its parts are familiar. In spite of its humor, I'm not even sure that it's a comedy. It's no satire, as the film doesn't say much about prosperity gospel evangelism, or sin and trespass, or roads to redemption. If it has a theme, maybe it's a look at the horrible cost of devotion. But if anything, the movie's a character study of our two leads, played to award level by Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. When black actors have complained forever that there aren't the parts based in the black experience that offer human characters with depth, intelligence, and nuance so black actors can show their range, these are the types of roles they've wanted, and it took Brown and Hall as producers, along with Daniel Kaluuya and Jordan Peele, executive producer, to make that difference, praise God, hallelujah, and to make Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul another entry into what is undoubtedly our American black film golden age. Amen to that. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
This is your Fast Track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. This is our Back to School special episode, Part 2. We'll talk about why so few young children have gotten their COVID vaccines.
And how long we should really be isolating when we get sick. Many kids are back in or heading back to school and preschool right now. We know that means the risk of spreading COVID will increase, yet very few young children have gotten the vaccine.
That's right. COVID vaccines have been available for all ages since mid-June, but only about a third of children ages 5 through 11 are fully vaccinated. And among kids under 5, the numbers are even lower, just a couple percent.
That's really low. Why is it so low?
Well, there are lots of reasons. The Kaiser Family Foundation polled the parents of young children about why they chose not to vaccinate their child against COVID. The top reason parents cited was that the vaccines were too new and had not been tested enough. Others were worried about their child having side effects that would mean having to stay home and look after them. But a considerable group of parents, about 1 in 10, said they simply weren't that worried about COVID anymore, so they didn't think their kid needed a vaccine.
Tell me more about those people. Why weren't they worried about COVID?
Well, since pretty early in the pandemic, the messaging from some experts and the media was that kids don't get as sick from COVID, especially if they didn't have any underlying health conditions. And that's true to some extent, but we also know that more than 1,400 children have died from the disease, including more than 500 under the age of 5.
Others have been hospitalized with a condition called MIS-C, which affects many different organs, and some kids have developed long COVID. While these complications are rare, being vaccinated could help protect kids against them.
Exactly. But the message that COVID is not a concern for kids has been pretty entrenched, and many parents have simply stopped following the news about it. They, understandably, just want to get back to normal, going back to school, having play dates, and so on. And getting vaccinated just hasn't seemed as important to many parents, many of whose kids have already had COVID and were okay.
So in other words, parents were more worried about the vaccine than they were worried about COVID itself.
That's right. I talked to a couple of parents of young children about how they approached the decision of whether or not to vaccinate their child. Michelle Fox, the mother of a 2-year-old boy in Massachusetts, told me that her son had COVID in May, right before the vaccines became available to his age group. She and her husband haven't had him vaccinated yet, in part because he had COVID so recently, and probably had some immunity from that. But she also said her husband was somewhat concerned about the risk of some extremely rare side effect, in part because her son was born premature, and she herself suffered an extremely rare side effect during pregnancy.
That's really interesting. Very rare side effects from vaccinations do occur, I know, though vaccines are generally extremely safe. But COVID itself can carry a risk for kids. 1,400 deaths? And some kids do get severe disease.
They do. At the end of the day, every parent has to decide for themselves how to determine what they think is a bigger risk to their child. Vaccination is one tool, a very effective one, to lower the small risk of severe illness in kids, especially as we head into another fall and winter with this virus. And updated booster shots that target Omicron specifically have now been authorized by the FDA. They're only for adults and kids 12 and over, though, so younger kids will have to wait a little longer for the new ones. 5 days of isolation. That's how long you're supposed to keep to yourself if you get COVID. But there's some new evidence that 5 days might not be quite long enough.
8 days might be more like it, Tanya. That's how long you might be infectious on average, according to some recent research. But let's back up a bit. The reason for isolation is to keep from spreading the disease to other people, to stop them from getting sick. In August, the CDC said to isolate for 5 days from the start of symptoms.
After that, if you haven't had a fever for a day and other symptoms have improved, you can go out, right? But if you do, you still have to wear a good mask for another 5 days.
That's the official line, yes.
But I'm guessing you're about to tell us that's not the scientific line.
You got it. Experts were never happy with that 5-day window, saying there's a good chance you could still spread the virus after that point. For instance, there was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine showing that people infected with the Omicron variant shed infectious virus 8 days after their first symptoms. A study just published in the Lancet Infectious Diseases looked at the viral loads of people infected with the Alpha and the Delta variants and estimated that about 2/3 of them would still be infectious to their communities at 5 days. That risk lasted as long as 7 days. And there's some other work pointing in the same direction.
So that really spotlights the importance of the second part of that CDC guidance. Wear a good, tight-fitting mask for another 5 days. N95s, KF94s, masks like those.
Yep, and that's probably why the CDC put that mask part in there. The 5-day window was always kind of mushy, and honestly, the 8-day window is a bit mushy too. Could be a bit more, could be a bit less. The Lancet study found that viral shedding was lower toward the end of that period, indicating that the risk of spreading was tapering off. And one other thing the Lancet research showed. Rapid antigen tests did a good job of showing people when they stopped being infectious.
But testing to leave isolation isn't part of the CDC guidance.
No, it's not. Even though the agency that approves those tests, the FDA, says that 2 tests are quite accurate if you take them 48 hours apart. They're good at spotting the virus and really good at letting you know when it's gone. Look, isolation is hard. And I think the CDC didn't want to make tests a barrier to getting out of your house. And masks do work. You can wear one while going to a local library, a community center, or to a drugstore to pick up some antigen tests. Use them. And that way you'll keep everyone around you safe.
Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us. Our show is edited by Jeff Del Vicio and Tulika Bose.
Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly. And check out SciAm.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning. The cap is loose on that ketchup.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. Vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
What makes a newspaper great? Many say it's having street-savvy reporters and editors with the integrity to shine the light of investigative journalism on the power structure's abuses. But no, says Fred Ryan, top executive of the Washington Post. The secret is attendance. Ryan, a corporate manager and former Ronald Reagan staffer, was handpicked to be CEO of the legendary paper by Jeff Bezos in 2014 when the Amazon billionaire bought the Post. But on Ryan's watch, readership is in decline, which he blames on newsroom sluggards who don't spend enough time in the office. So he's become the hall monitor, measuring reporters' productivity by their office attendance. Fred seems unaware that a good reporter's real work is out on the beat, not sitting in front of a computer. No doubt he would have fired Woodward and Bernstein for being out of office so often to meet with Deep Throat to uncover Nixon's Watergate scandal. In fairness, though, he apparently has a two-part plan to boost team spirit. 1, eliminate 100 reporters. And 2, judge the output of those remaining by counting the number of video conferences they attend each week. But that's hardly the totality of Ryan's innovations. The big news is that he's hired not 1 but 2 high-dollar PR firms to create a cutting-edge, quote, branding strategy for the Post. Already, they've come up with a spiffy new corporate slogan, "We don't just break news, we break ground." Wow, how great is that? Never mind that some wags have changed the second line to "We break wind." This is Jim Hightower saying, when overpaid incompetents like Ryan substitute slogans and computer metrics for real solutions, they're admitting that they are the problem. They don't know how to motivate and manage a creative workforce. They should resign in embarrassment.
Thou shalt not kill. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And on August 25th, that was the sign that a cousin of the man the state of Oklahoma was about to execute was holding in protest. It seemed for a while in August that the execution of James Coddington might not go forward, because on August 3rd, the State Pardon and Parole Board recommended that his life be spared. Indeed, the former director of the state prison system, as well as a former Speaker of the State House of Representatives, publicly spoke out to try to stop the execution. They said Coddington had achieved redemption. But the governor, Kevin Stitt, who had appointed most of the members of the State Pardon and Parole Board, rejected their recommendation. And on August 25th, the state, as planned, executed James Coddington. He was 50. 26 states have abolished the death penalty or have imposed a moratorium on executions. For good reasons. The death penalty makes no one safer. It's racially and economically biased. The system makes mistakes, grave mistakes, and it's irreversible. Oklahoma now is planning to carry out an execution almost every month for the next 2 years. Yes, really, month after month after month after month after month. That state plans to kill someone to demonstrate that killing is wrong. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. The United States Congress had passed the Landrum-Griffin Act. President Eisenhower signed the new law, which was also called the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act. The new law had lasting consequences for the way unions operated. One of the reasons Congress passed the law was alleged abuses of power by some union leaders. The law aimed to protect workers by requiring secret ballots for union elections and protecting freedom of speech within unions. It also required unions to submit annual financial reports to the Department of Labor. While these requirements protected members' rights, not all of the provisions were so positive. The law was passed during the 1950s Red Scare. It required that no one could hold a union-elected leadership position until 5 years after leaving the Communist Party. This part of the law was declared unconstitutional in 1965. The law also expanded the anti-labor provisions of the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act prohibited some union activities, such as sympathetic strikes and secondary boycotts. The Landrum-Griffith Act took this all a step further. It tightened the boycott restrictions. It also put limits on the union's ability to picket while organizing for recognition. It placed considerable new federal reporting requirements on the unions. Despite these further restrictions upon labor unions, union workers comprised a third of the total workforce in the United States during the 1950s, the highest percentage of union workers in U.S. history. But the restrictive policies laid out in Taft-Hartley and Landrum-Griffin would help slow and eventually reverse this growth of unionization. Today, less than 12% of U.S. workers are members of unions. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only around 80, thankfully. A mix of clouds and sun throughout the day with winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies overnight with lows near the mid-50s. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs below 80, so they say. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Once again, the confirmed cases of coronavirus and deceased from coronavirus has been taken off the dashboard here at the Weather Underground, and I've looked for the state totals, and apparently they're not giving them out just yet. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is good at 28 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is high at level 6. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.92 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Ooh, tropical, isn't it? Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 70 degrees and sunny. Paris is 78 and partly cloudy with a thunder and electrical storm watch advisory, in which could impact critical electrical infrastructure. Rome is 85 and fair with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Kabul is 70 and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and fair. Tokyo is 75 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 58 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. And New York is a pleasant 74 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Nicholas Garriga and Barbara Sirk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Lights on the Eiffel Tower will soon be turned off more than an hour earlier at night to save electricity as Russia's war in Ukraine deepens an energy crisis in Europe. Mayor Anne Hidalgo said the iconic tower that is normally illuminated until 1 a.m. is only one of the city's monuments and municipal buildings that will be plunged into darkness earlier in the evening as the French capital, like the rest of France and Europe, faces risks of power shortages, rationing, and blackouts when energy demand surges this winter. Lights on the Eiffel Tower will be turned off after the last visitor leaves at 11:45 p.m., starting on the 23rd of September, Hidalgo said. Other landmarks operated by the city, such as the St. Jacques Tower and City Hall, will be turned off at 10 p.m.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Marcy Gordon, Matt O'Brien, and Barbara Ortate of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Twitter's former security chief told Congress yesterday, Tuesday, there was at least one agent from China's intelligence service on Twitter's payroll, and that the company knowingly allowed India to add agents to the company roster as well, potentially giving those nations access to sensitive data about users. There were some troubling revelations from Peter Mudge Zatko, a respected cybersecurity expert and Twitter whistleblower who appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee to lay out his allegations against the company. Zatko told lawmakers that the social media platform is plagued by weak cyber defenses that make it vulnerable to exploitation by teenagers, thieves, and spies, and put the privacy of its users at risk. I am here today because Twitter leadership is misleading the public, lawmakers, regulators, and even its own board of directors, Zatko said as he began his sworn testimony. In a statement, Twitter said its hiring process is independent of any foreign influence, and access to data is managed through a host of measures, including background checks, access controls, and monitoring and detection systems and processes. Well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on And we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.